Welcome to Journey Through Time, a channel that keeps important historical events for each day of the year. February 12th is designated as the International Day Against the Use of Child Soldiers, serving as a stark reminder of the heartbreaking reality that continues to unfold worldwide. On this occasion, let's take a journey through history to examine the issue of children being forced into warfare. The establishment of this International Day, and the relentless efforts of global organizations in influencing policies, laws, and raising public awareness to put an end to this crisis. Did you know that tens of thousands of children around the world are still being forced into war? Instead of learning and playing, these children are made to wield weapons and witness the horrors of the battlefield. Imagine if one day, our own children were caught up in such conflicts. The laughter of childhood replaced by the sounds of gunfire, and innocent eyes filled with fear. This is not a movie, it is a painful reality happening every day. For this reason, February 12th was designated as the International Day Against the Use of Child Soldiers, also known as Red Hand Day. It is a time for the world to unite and speak out to protect children's rights and prevent this tragedy from continuing. War is not just a set of numbers on a news report, it is a catastrophe for tens of thousands of children worldwide. Despite numerous efforts to eradicate this issue, many children are still being forced to take up arms, fight, and endure horrors that no child should ever experience. Africa has long been regarded as a hotspot for child soldier recruitment. Ethnic conflicts, resource disputes, and armed violence have turned several countries into the most notorious regions for child soldier exploitation. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, according to the United Nations, thousands of children have been forced or coerced into joining armed groups such as Mai Mai and the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda. These children are not only sent to the front lines but are also used as spies, weapon carriers, or even subjected to sexual slavery. In Somalia, Al-Shabaab, one of the most dangerous terrorist groups in the region, continuously recruits children into its forces. They use schools for propaganda, abduct children from villages, and even force families to hand over their children. In Sudan and South Sudan, both government forces and rebel groups have been accused of recruiting child soldiers. The situation is especially dire, with children as young as 10 to 12 years old being forced to fight, leaving them with no choice but to take up arms for survival. In many places, children are indoctrinated with war from an early age, to the point where they no longer recognize that violence is not the only path. In the Middle East, prolonged civil wars and conflicts have turned children into tools of war. Some are kidnapped, while others join armed groups simply because they have no other option. More than 3.500 children in Yemen have been recruited into the civil war between the Houthis and opposing forces since 2015. Many have been forced to serve as guards, messengers, and even frontline combatants. In Syria and Iraq, ISIS has exploited children in its military operations, especially at its peak from 2014 to 2017. Children were not only trained for combat but also turned into human bombs for suicide attacks. Some children as young as 8 years old have been trained to use firearms and explosives. To extremist groups, these children are not human beings but mere tools of war. The issue of child soldiers is not confined to Africa and the Middle East. Many Asian countries have also witnessed this crisis. Both the government military and ethnic armed groups in Myanmar have been accused of recruiting children for years. Many children are deceived or coerced into joining armed forces under the false promise of a better future, only to be turned into frontline soldiers. In Afghanistan, the Taliban and ISIS-K continue to recruit children, particularly from impoverished communities where education is nearly non-existent. These children are turned into suicide bombers, army scouts, or trained as future fighters. These children have no childhood, no access to education, and no control over their own fate. In Latin America, The problem of child soldiers does not stem from civil wars but from criminal organizations and drug cartels. Before the peace agreement in 2016, Colombia's FARC armed group used thousands of child soldiers. Even after FARC's disarmament, criminal gangs continue to recruit children for drug trafficking and violent activities. Unlike in other regions, children here are not abducted but voluntarily join due to poverty and societal pressure. Although this situation has improved compared to the past, tens of thousands of children worldwide are still being forced into warfare. For many, wielding a gun has become normal, and peace is just a distant dream. Children who once held guns may leave the battlefield, but war never leaves them. Nightmares and horrifying memories haunt them for life. According to UNICEF research, more than 60% of former child soldiers suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. They live in fear, lose trust in people, and some even suffer from depression so severe that they contemplate suicide. Beyond psychological damage, being forced into war robs many children of the chance to receive an education. In conflict zones, school dropout rates reach as high as 80%, meaning millions of children lose their future and become trapped in cycles of poverty and violence. Experiencing death, being forced to kill, and living in a violent environment deeply scar these children. Former child soldiers suffer from PTSD, frequent nightmares, panic attacks at loud noises, and extreme reactions to ordinary situations. They experience depression and anxiety, feeling guilt, shame, and losing confidence in themselves and society. Some struggle to control their emotions, easily resorting to violence because war has become their norm. According to Save the Children reports, former child soldiers are 5 times more likely to attempt suicide than other children. A boy from the Central African Republic once shared that every night he dreams of being hunted or forced to kill someone. He can never sleep peacefully. Beyond psychological trauma, many child soldiers endure severe physical injuries. Battlefield wounds leave some children disabled for life. Living conditions in the military expose them to malnutrition, lack of clean water, and infectious diseases like malaria and tuberculosis. Many girls are subjected to sexual slavery or forced marriages with military commanders. A girl forced to marry a rebel leader in Congo recalled being told she was no longer a person but merely a tool for their pleasure. Every day, she lived in fear and pain. Even if they survive, many former child soldiers struggle to reintegrate into society. Some are shunned by their families and communities, who fear them or see them as war criminals. Many lack education or job skills, making employment nearly impossible. Some are recaptured by armed groups or voluntarily returned to conflict because they have no other options. A former ISIS child soldier in Syria said he tried to return to school, but people avoided him, calling him abnormal. He felt isolated and hopeless. When tens of thousands of children are deprived of education and development, it affects not just their futures but also the economy and stability of entire nations. Countries with high child soldier rates typically see 2 to 3% lower economic growth than non-conflict nations, according to a World Bank study. Thus, war not only robs children of their childhood but also creates a generation that is physically and mentally scarred. We know the truth, but what has the world done to change it? Since 1977 with the Geneva Conventions, and in 2000 with the OPAC Protocol, numerous efforts have been made to protect children. However, laws alone are not enough. Stronger action is needed from all of us. Organizations such as UNICEF, Save the Children, and many other humanitarian groups have helped thousands of children escape war. Yet these numbers are still far from ending this tragedy. On February 12, 2000, the OPAC Protocol was signed. The main provisions of the protocol include: first, raising the age of participation in conflicts. The protocol mandates that countries must ensure children under 18 do not participate directly in armed conflicts. Second, prohibiting states from recruiting or using children under 18 in their armed forces. Third, requiring nations to implement measures to protect children from involvement in armed conflicts, including providing support and rehabilitation for affected children. This event marked a significant step forward in efforts to protect children from being exploited in armed conflicts. Since then, February 12 has been designated as the International Day Against the Use of Child Soldiers. This day has become a symbol of international efforts to protect children and calls for accountability from the global community. On February 12, 2007, a special international conference was held in Paris, where over 100 countries came together to make an important commitment known as the Paris Principles. This document serves as a guideline for the protection, rescue, and reintegration of former child soldiers. The Paris Principles go beyond mere declarations; they have led to concrete actions, with thousands of children being disarmed and reunited with their families. Many psychological support, education, and vocational training programs have been implemented to help these children build a new future. The year 2007 also marked an important milestone when the United Nations and UNICEF, in collaboration with international organizations, launched awareness campaigns. Numerous conferences, exhibitions, and hearings were held to bring this issue into the spotlight. One of the most impactful efforts was a global media campaign featuring haunting images of child soldiers' lives, aiming to capture the attention of world leaders and the public. In 2017, Save the Children released a crucial report on the psychological impact of war on child soldiers. The report revealed that children who had once held guns were 3 times more likely to suffer from depression than their peers, and that many of them lived in fear for the rest of their lives. Alongside the report, a special photography exhibition was organized to vividly and powerfully portray the lives of former child soldiers, moving the hearts of millions. In 2021, for the first time, mass protests erupted worldwide on Red Hand Day. From New York, London, and Paris to Nairobi and Bogotá, thousands of people took to the streets, demanding an end to the use of child soldiers in war. Not only on the streets but also on social media, the #EndChildSoldiers campaign spread rapidly, garnering millions of shares. This was proof that the world was increasingly concerned about this issue. Most recently, in 2023, international organizations increased pressure on governments to take more decisive action. UNICEF held numerous meetings with world leaders, urging them to enforce stricter policies to prevent the recruitment of children into armed forces. Additionally, several countries pledged millions of dollars in funding for disarmament and reintegration programs, giving former child soldiers a chance to rebuild their lives. What once seemed like a symbolic day, Red Hand Day, has now become a global movement, directly influencing policies, laws, and public awareness. But are these efforts enough? The reality is that despite significant progress, thousands of children worldwide are still being forced to take up arms. That is why we need even more concrete actions to truly eliminate this issue. Every small action we take today can create a big change in the future. We can support this cause by sharing information, donating to humanitarian organizations, or simply raising our voices so that more people are aware of this issue. Let's stand together and end the use of child soldiers. Let children's hands be colored with paintbrushes, not blood and war. If you found this video meaningful, like, comment, and share to spread this message further. And don't forget to subscribe to join Journey Through Time, where the past becomes vivid and meaningful.